Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Black Advancement. I'm your host slash moderator, Ajiman Jasante Goodman. On the screen with me, I also have today Antoine Smallwood, Greg Goodman, and Darian Robbins. And as I said before, this is Black Advancement Incorporated. Before we get into the topic for today, let me tell you what Black Advancement Incorporated is. Black Advancement Incorporated is a nonprofit organization that seeks to combat problems within the Black community through action and dialogue, this being one of the dialogue portions. Before we get into our topic today, let me hit you guys off with a front street. Black Advancements Incorporated's home is in the DMV area, which is home to some of the blacker cities in the country and counties in the nation. However, anyone from this area can tell you the monster of gentrification has hit with the force of a comet here, bringing the subject of race and class to the forefront of everyday life. Chocolate City, aka Washington, D.C., looks nowadays much less like a milk chocolate bar and more like the cookies and cream bar. A perfect example of this is displayed when the Montreal Expos moved to DC and became the Nationals. This move begot the building of a stadium, which led to new high-end condos and hipster eateries and restaurants that previously never would have dreamed of coming to the area. To be clear, all this investment and improvement of a once impoverished area is good news. It does create a whole new stream of income for DC and employment opportunities as well. Young professionals will be more likely to live in the city and spend time and money there. The metro will increase revenue and all these upgrades. Well, not to mention that the team used to be competitive. It's not competitive currently. But anyway, we'll get into that another time. But anyway, missing from all of these upgrades, though, are the thoughts and concerns of the residents that previously lived in the area that were undervalued. Where would these people live? Where do they go once they have to leave? How would the rapidly changing economic upheaval impact their lives? These types of overhauls have occurred and continue to occur in neighborhoods just like this one in DC throughout America, begging the question of whether gentrification is helping to destroy the Black community. So with all that being said, we're going to go into our first question, which is gentrification a good thing? And on that, we will start with Antoine Smallwood. Antoine, take it away.
I appreciate it, Ach. What's up, everybody? I think that gentrification as a whole has positive effects, but I never believe overall that it's a great thing because it is also displacing a community of folks who are, usually homogenous to the space and have been there for many, many years. And I just think I've never seen it done well enough for me to be like, this is a good thing. What are the good things about it, right? Obviously bringing restaurants, businesses, all sorts of things that may not have been known to said area. However, my question always, why would you not bring that when it's the previous list of folks that have been living there, and have a chance to see would it thrive? Because last time I looked, if you put restaurants, foods, clothing stores, shopping mall, strip mall, whatever you name it, sporting teams, the locals will always support that. I don't think displacing folks is the way to ensure your success. I just think it's wealthy people coming in and it's a way to kind of control land since they're not building any more of that, right? You can replace sports teams. Redskins became the Commanders. They can build a new stadium in Northern Virginia if they want. But guess what? The folks who live there, if you go to some of these neighborhoods, it's just, that's their home, sometimes for several generations. And I just think that displacing them and having to force them to find a new life, so to speak, outside of the one that they knew, is not the move to make. So I would say gentrification overall, not great.
Fantastic. Greg.
Gentrification is a horrible idea for anyone who's being gentrified. I'll say that. On paper, it would look like a brilliant plan. You bring in these great businesses and everything else. You get some more employment for the people that are living in these neighborhoods. Problem with most of that is most of the time the jobs that the people that live in these neighborhoods get from this new stadium, new building, new Amazon building, whatever the great business that they move in, the jobs generally don't pay enough for them to maintain living there.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're there, they can get these jobs, but rent gets higher.
Mm-hmm.
Everything costs more, so eventually they're gonna have to move out anyway. Now, if they had some kind of program where they move these businesses in, they have a training program to help said community that's already there get these jobs, and the employers there pay a fair enough wage for them to stay in their neighborhoods, even with the economy boosting and everything, the whole area becoming more expensive. That could work for gentrification, but it never. And I literally mean, I can't think of one case where that has ever been the case. So for the local residents there, it is a bad idea. If you're a businessman, brilliant idea. You go there, you get property for cheap, you build new stuff, and then you just overcharge everybody for everything.
I mean, Brooklyn is an excellent example of that, right? So when the tech bros moved out from San Francisco, where now you're paying like $2,000 for like a cube of space in a bedroom that's like equivalent for a toddler, right? They came to Brooklyn, overpriced things. You had a Barclays Center. There were jobs that were promised to the local folks, right? That never really came to fruition at a level where they would be able to maintain living in a neighborhood they've lived in for a long time. Barclays Center has thrived. It's been home to all kind of fights, championships, NBA, WNBA. You know what it's not home to anymore? The people who used to live there. And now a lot of that
Thanks,
stuff
Jay-Z.
It's insane.
Hope tried, man.
Chill, God. Chill, God. Yeah, chill, God. We still growing. God, chill, God.
Excuse me, I had to clear my throat. All right, go ahead, D.
Yeah, Darren, go ahead.
I don't really have much to add. I agree with both of the my panel mates about gentrification. Like Antoine was saying, have benefits, but it doesn't benefit the people. The people who are live there and get displaced don't reap those benefits. And to me, the benefits that come about, signal investment from the city and businesses into that area that the people that they're displacing should benefit from if they were allowed to be able to stay there, if it wasn't intentionally set up for them to move them out of there in place of a different form of population, or that has a higher bracket, maybe even a different skin color, different culture, anything like that. So gentrification, in my opinion, just like the other two gentlemen, my friends have stated, I don't think it has a overall a benefit in terms of the people who have lived there and been there for generations. And then Audrey, you mentioned about DC being a prime example, and as someone who probably in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s would go to DC, to hang out and enjoy themselves, like not just that area, which technically where the national stadium now is in Southeast.
Yep.
DC. So I remember when that came about, and they said, "Oh yeah, this is where they're going to build it." And I'm like, "Really? Here?" I mean, so most times I, in that area was, industrial. They had a couple nightclubs down there, some strip clubs, some other, it was not the spectacle of I guess of new growth and buildings that you see now down there surrounding that. And so and also another area, U Street. In DC, same thing. If you went down there late 90s, early 2000s, I mean, it's a totally different vibe than what's there now. You know what I'm saying? And totally different look. I mean, I know I passed through there recently one time, and I didn't even realize I was on U Street.
I got lost over by the Navy Yard.
Yeah,
I used to work there. I got lost. I was like, yo, I don't know where I am. It wasn't until I saw the stadium where I was like, wait, what is going on over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was a wrap when I saw a white woman walking a golden retriever. I knew it was over.
Let's go to the website. Guy on the couch, what do you got?
Okay, for question number 1, is gentrification a good thing? Jelly says yes. Because of gentrification, people of color have learned what can become a neighborhood if people work together for a common purpose/goal. The hurt and anger experienced from seeing areas where we live turning quote unquote caramel is clear. The question is, why did it happen? I think it's because of location. Not all areas are being gentrified, and why not? Because the location wasn't attractive. Access to transportation, entertainment venues, and work easier for those areas being gentrified. We didn't realize it because we didn't see the vision, which was designed years ago. We must educate ourselves about the city planning / zoning and anticipate what will happen. Build where we live and invest where we live. If others come to live there, so what? They'll support our businesses too because we were proactive and planned accordingly for ourselves. Back to you.
That's an interesting point from Jelly from the website. What do you guys have to say about that? The idea that yes, this is good, and the bigger problem is we're not getting in on the ground floor of some of these plans.
I'd say that's
I think that
intentional. Oh, go ahead, Antoine.
nope, you took it right out of my mouth. Roll it. Go ahead.
No, I think it's intentional. I mean, you can look at the plans all day. You know what I'm saying? But if let's say I have a plan to invest into, some of the areas that the city plan is planning to go into. If I don't have the capital to do it, you know what I'm saying? Where am I? How am I going to get my foot in the door?
Well, you just
And
get a
so-
loan, of course.
Oh, really? Okay. Just get a loan. You know what I'm saying? That does. I don't think that's always is accessible for everyone. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
So that's why I think, again, with all this stuff, is that if you want people who are, I guess, who've been in that area to benefit, you have to be intentional. Government on a government level, at a corporate level, you have to be intentional about bringing them in from the get-go. That, to me, is the only way that's going to happen. There's too many forces in terms of societal, economic, and historical that really weigh against us. Let's make sure we're there, got our foothold there before everyone else. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think that's historically that's not been the way that this works. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why I say that is that my I guess my guiding principle, that it will always be Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know what I'm saying? Here's a case where, and not just that place. I mean, you also had Rosewood as well. And I'm bringing up places where Central Park. That's a remarkable.
Yeah.
And all if you ask, that's actually an aspect of gentrification is moving out the population. You know what I'm saying? Either by force, by law, or economics, to now clear the space to have it ready for development. You know what I'm saying? But displacing thriving communities.
Yeah, yep. I believe the guy who did that in New York, I think it was Robert Moses was his name. It's something Moses. He was infamous for that. Like, he basically rebuilt New York, of course, using highways and stuff to go through cities that were, or cities and places that were mostly full of people of color, I should say, in one way. Greg, how did you feel about it as far as a comment from the website?
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, Jelly would be 100% correct. But the way that the system is set up, you're wrong, Jelly. You're wrong. You're 100% wrong. You see, it goes way past just the typical thing. We're talking about redlining, tax dollars, all these other aspects that have to happen in order for these neighborhoods to get their stuff together.
Yeah.
So the only way to do what they're talking about doing is to have the government system back the accomplishments of that neighborhood. Now, if that doesn't happen, then you got nothing. So you got no government help. The banks don't want to give people loans, especially people in poor neighborhoods. And if they do, the percentage they're going to have to pay on these loans is ridiculous. So they're never going to get out of that anyway. The only way to make something like that happen is to come in with money. And you're talking about a place that is already that has been displaced to have no money, based on things like you said, with the government just basically just picking people up and getting them out of there. I can guarantee you this: everywhere where you see a major highway, there was once a successful Black neighborhood.
Absolutely.
And every time there's a successful Black neighborhood, these things get displaced, dismantled, broken down, and then moved out, and the people get nothing for their property or their time, or the time that they've spent there. See, if you were going to do something like that, that's when it would have had to happen back then.
Mm-hmm.
But now the system is already set in place where you're already behind the 8 ball. So, I mean, at that point, there's nothing really you can do other than if you're somebody from one of these neighborhoods and you make it out and fall into a lump sum of money based on your career, talents, and everything else, and then go back and try and buy back your whole neighborhood and everything else, that's a possibility. But even when people try and do that, at times it goes wrong. Like Nipsey Hussle, for example. I mean, these things happen. Just, so in theory, it would be great, but in reality, it's not realistic in most of these cases.
Yeah, big bank, take a little bank. Antoine, take us home on this question.
Listen, that got to be jelly because jam don't shake like that. Listen, let me tell you, the biggest issue is that when you go in, it's an access and inclusionary thing that has to happen for the folks who are there to be able to get in, right? So to both D and Greg's point, without that access, without that inclusionary practice of finances and being brought in on the fold on everything that you would need to succeed, you're setting them up for failure, and that's a huge part that never gets discussed. So it's idealism that Jelly is actually talking about. When you take off those rose-colored lenses and you look at the harsh reality of it, right? It's no mistake that where these major highways go, it was successful Black neighborhoods, or it was burned down with Tulsa and all these other things, right? Because if it was designed for success, there have been smart enough people in the annals of history who've always had an idea, right? And you take any great idea and you support it with access and opportunity, which is really what's missing there. Now it would thrive, right? But if you set it up to fail, i.e. the lack of approval, the Wells Fargo's kind of shit, and all these different things that have happened in time, both recent and historical, nobody's going to survive that, and you'll look up and it doesn't take 20, 30 years. It can be like 2 or 3 years. You won't recognize the area, the space. Even in Brooklyn, I used to live in Brooklyn for a number of years before I moved up here to Riverdale. And let me tell you, like, there were never white people going to the part of Brooklyn that I used to live in, right? And it's not that they weren't allowed to, but it just wasn't the makeup of the neighborhood. By the time I moved, they were riding deeper and deeper on the train to the point where you looked up one day, and I think Greg is the one who mentioned you saw like a golden retriever, and you saw like a bunch of that going around, and you're like, man, something has changed. You didn't just come out, right?
A man on a unicycle,
and
that's what happened.
But you know where I knew the change had come? It's going to sound crazy, right? There was a Starbucks that popped up, right? And some of those mom and pop shops that were there that, they made good coffee too, gone. Yeah. It became a thing of, what do we need to attract the folks who we want to be here? Let's put a bunch of those toys and different things around for them. And now, oh yeah, something that maybe they can afford or that we want them to afford, and they come to it, right? And so you hadn't even gotten to the practice of landlording where people might say, hey, the 4 of us in this car could be the richest people in the world and they wouldn't want to rent to you or sell to you or anything like that. There's levels to that. And it's sad, but it's the harsh reality that we live in. So how do you overcome that? And how do you overcome something that's systemic? It takes, people realizing that you're stronger together. And in this time, while we have more access to things, you still need the in. Nobody's doing that by themselves. There's plenty of wealthy brown folks at this point, but it's just a matter of you need access to certain things. What are those things are?
Always the gatekeeper.
Yes, there's a lot of gatekeeping. You can use your imagination because if you have money, right? Let's say I'm a billionaire, right? Let's say I'm like, what's the old boy that owns the Weather Channel and all that, right? Let's say I'm him, right? Byron Allen. Right. What's stopping me at that point from getting things done? Clearly, there's something that I'm missing, right? Because people will say, oh, they just need money and a job and this or that. No, I have all those things. I have amazing credit, got all that. What's stopping me from maintaining and starting there? There's something more that I'm lacking. And you can use your imagination as to what that is. That's what it is. And the only way to overcome that is only one thing,
While you're
it's all connections.
You can also go to www.blackadvancement.com where you can look at our research section where you get a chance to look at some of the research that was done behind some articles that were done behind some of the topics that we go over. So that way, if you don't feel comfortable about talking about them or writing a comment to them on the website, you can feel more confident after that. Or you can go to our topics page where you can offer up topics for us to discuss, but also look at some of the topics that we have available to discuss and look up some of our stuff from there. There's also an events page that lets you know when we're doing things such as the shows that we did today for the female voice and for shows like this and the Obnoxious and others. And also, last but not least, although starved but very cool, is our In History section where we go over rare things in history that people might not know pertaining to Black people. With all that being said, I'm going to go to question number 2, which is, why do you feel the resources that came with gentrification are never applied to these neighborhoods when the residency is, let's say, Blacker? I'll start with Greg on this one.
Is that why?
Yeah. Why do you
simple racism? That's
our show today, folks. We like to thank everybody for tuning in.
It's a simple answer to it. You know, it's a whole. It goes back to the whole structure. People are looking at these like this is a new thing that's happened. These plans have been set in motion for probably 100 years at this point. Redlining, keeping the money out, taking the money out of the schools. Even when you do have the schools, they take out the what is it? The programs where they're teaching kids how to be electricians and all these other things. They've taken all that away. It's all been stripped. So now you've got a poorly funded school in a poor neighborhood. Nobody wants it because nobody wants to invest in them. This all comes back to hookups from the government. And if you're not in the neighborhood where the government is going to look out for you or take care of the basic needs, then it's hard to come up out of that. It's plain and simple. And that is mainly based on race, hence racism.
My fault, Greg. I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, racism. Derek.
I agree. I think the main reason is racism. I also think there's also aspect of capitalism involved with that as well, tied to globalization. That so say for example, these areas before where they might have had some industrial component, let's say some factory supporting middle class working base. We look at towards the 80s, we see how manufacturing basically had got gutted and sent overseas in the aspect of looking for a cheaper cost of developing goods, and then taking those goods and importing them into our country for consumption. And that's not a thing of I'm trying to get on that feel of that we should. It's just the facts. It's just what happened. Whatever policies were made, and or whether they be economic and or governmental, they encourage that. And so those places that might have existed in these areas that are now been gentrified, or coming back or being gentrified, those things left out of that aspect. So that left a hole in terms of economic opportunities that this area, let's say mostly populated by Black folks, would have been able to benefit from and take an opportunity from. And you can see this this aspect of it, where if you go to these places where where gentrification is occurring, look at the building that some of the buildings there, you'll see the facades are something that's okay. This old factory has now been turned into luxury condominiums, or you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You're seeing it right then and there. The industrial or the economic opportunity has been taken out of there and now replaced by high-end entertainment feature venue and or living space or whatever that caters to this new population of economic means. You know what I'm saying? But so I feel like if somebody of color even with money would have came in and said, "Hey, we want to do this," they probably wouldn't have gotten the same support from the city and or other things to make that same thing happen. And it's funny that
even if it would have happened, the level of interest that you would have had to pay is way different.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt.
Different.
We know that by historical and even means now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and one of the things that you mentioned, Byron Allen. I mean, that's almost a perfect example of something that's happening now. I mean, he literally had to sue Comcast just to be able to get his stations in the mix of their offering to customers. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking and when he did his lawsuit, he wasn't no poor person off the street. This is a man of means and money. You know what I'm saying?
Billionaire.
Millionaire. You know what I'm saying? Basically say and not like, he's not bringing in like like a newly found CW or UPN. You know what I'm saying? We're talking.
But is he a crypto bro? You see what I'm saying? Is he a crypto bro? That's the question.
I mean, if he would just came in with some shorts and some Birkenstocks, you know what I'm saying? He might have got further, you know what I'm saying? But no, I mean, so it's, I look at the examples like that where it's like, and don't get me wrong, I don't look at it as a complete turnoff, you know what I'm saying? Because, in terms of from pure aspiration, you know what I'm saying? And this is one of the things, going back to Jelly's point of making yourself aware of where these the tides are taking cities, investors, you know what I'm saying? The information is out there. We can take advantage of that. You know what I'm saying? We can follow those tea leaves on those paths and start putting ourselves on those paths. You know what I'm saying? And so into doing that in combination with the historical and societal aspects of it is that we understand the game. You know what I'm saying? So we can make ourselves better of, okay, you're gonna pull this stop out. Well, here's where I got to counter it. You know what I'm saying? Or, oh, you're gonna tell me that I gotta come to this amount of money to the table. I'm gonna come with the money to the table. And then what's gonna be the next way you're gonna move the goalpost? Let me think about that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think we're getting in a position now where we can start counteracting the goal shifting and goalpost movement once we show up there with the appropriate stuff that would have been fine for anybody else before. You know what I'm saying? But now has shifted or needs to be different now because I'm Black and I got a way of some means to be able to actually make happen what you think I couldn't bring to the table before.
Well, yeah, that the goal shifting has happened not only on a local level but globally. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Hence the whole what is it? Global warming phenomenon. But I digress from that. Antoine, you go ahead on this question.
Oh yeah, I mean, everybody hit it home here. I'll just keep it brief, right? So look at it like this. Imagine if gentrification was like framed in the world of sports and you have a quarterback who just happens to be Black, right? That does not have weapons, offensive line or anything, right? Has Lamar a bunch Jackson? Of 500 seasons. And then, guess what happens? They let him go. He goes to another team. They bring in Joe Burrow. They draft all the weapons, bring in all the weapons, bring in the offensive line, right? Bring in a proper coaching staff, proper training staff to keep you standing upright, rub down on your Achilles after the game, all of that. That's what happens. It's literally support on every level. So if you have these neighborhoods that are there, it's not the people who are inept at doing this, right? They're smart people who are there. They're strong people. They're resilient people. They're people with money, right? There are people who are doing okay, and maybe they had a boost of support. They do even better. There are businesses that exist there. There are certain businesses they don't bring there for a reason. They don't bring and offer that support on a governmental level, on a local level, finances, and that's both in terms of infusing life into something that may be dying or in dire need of help and assistance versus something that's also going to be needing to get off the ground. On an educational level for folks who may not have been coming from a generational wealth where it's like 40 families of the color blue living in that neighborhood and they just know what to do with that and what so on and so forth. You have to be able to have that kind of support. That is what will allow you to have success in terms of gentrification versus stimulating what's already there. There's nothing wrong with the flower in the pot. Are you giving it enough sunlight? Are you giving it too much water, not enough water? What does it take? That's what you have to look at. And right now, anybody with common sense knows is just lacking the proper resources to either sustain, build, or develop what is already there. Because magically, when they come in and scoop you out and they bring in the new, all of those things are in place. And so it just looks like it just works. And it's worse if you are a person who lived there and you're like, man, that's the frustration. That's the bane of my existence is that we were never given that, right? Because then there are people like, well, you should have went out and got it. Again, I go back to the example of if you already have, old buddy shouldn't have had to fight to get his channels on Comcast Xfinity. You see what I'm saying? It should never be that. It's that way for a reason because it's by design. It shouldn't matter that your mother is your agent, but he's not one of the normal people, but it's just what it is, right? people have become accustomed to things being a certain way. And so when you talk about gentrification, there's never really been a plan of action to eliminate it from being a bad thing, right? It's almost like it's bad, but we're painting this as a rebrand, you know? And that rebrand is not great because you're neglecting people, human beings, you know? And I just think that's really what it's all about.
Well, let's go to the website and see what's going on. Guy on the couch, what do you got for question number 2?
Okay, question number 2. Why do you feel resources that come with gentrification are never applied to these neighborhoods when the residency is Blacker? ROB says the history of Blacks and real estate seems to indicate Blacks don't care for their property, endangering the investment. Bear in mind, that totally ignores the shackles placed on Blacks to put them into difficult situations, i.e. poor education, poor nutrition, hyper police involvement, and on and on and on. These factors put Blacks in terrible situations and throw obstacles in their way, and then they're questioned about their lack of success. The money doesn't come to Blacks because Blacks in America are underpaid and mistreated by the banking system, and consequently, many cannot afford to remain and afford the necessary investment to contribute to the value of the neighborhoods. It's so simply another case of systemic racism, just in the banking and investment community. Back to you.
Now, ROB had a lot of good points on there, but I'm going to focus on the one point that's going to spark a conversation, which was obvious to me when he talked about Black property ownership and our lack of ability to be able to upkeep our stuff, which I will say is both stereotypical and true, I would say, in some cases. So, I mean, to that point of what they were saying, what do you guys have to say to that? Greg, I saw your face turn down. Oh, go ahead, Antoine, if you want to go first.
No, go ahead, Greg. Go ahead. I don't want to disrupt the flow.
I'll just make this quick. As far as this whole Blacks keeping up the neighborhood, like they're not filling in potholes. Like what? Like the stuff like that. They're not painting the lines.
Let me push back.
Not keeping the maintenance of the buildings.
Yeah,
these are all. This is not a community thing. This is a government thing. The government's not giving the money to make these things happen.
Well, let me push back for a second. There have always been cases where, and these are all individualized cases that I'm going to use to generalize in some cases, where you have poor people who are a certain persuasion, and they're in a certain place. You know, you start getting holes in the wall. They don't take care of this and that. I understand what I'm saying is very stereotypical in general. I'm doing that on purpose, just for people who don't know me. So
no, but I'm going to jump in and be the villain here, right? Because I've lived in some of those places. And let me tell you something. When they're throwing people off the roof and they're shooting up the building and the elevator don't work, right? And then they get a bunch of those people out and there's other people that come in, you know, and then next thing you know, all of those things work and those things stop happening. There's some validity to that conversation. People may not want to talk about it. They may want to sweep it under a rug, but there is an element of truth to that, you know, because the people on the ground will tell you, hey, I don't want to live around this. Why are these things happening, right? And it's because it's almost been ingrained in us for so long that this is how you should be or how you should act. And people kind of buy into that type of narrative and philosophy. So it's one of those things where, yeah, it's absolutely true. And two things can be true at once. It's not true for everything and everybody, but it's true a lot of times. You know, you'll live in some spots where you're like, man, this is a building, a construct, right? Where you may pay certain rent or some people don't pay rent, right? But guess what? Nobody's paying you to kill people. Nobody's paying you to throw people off the roof. Nobody's paying you to stop people from being able to get into their home because you're...
To be fair, Antoine, no one's paying you to kill people.
There you go. Right. Not me. Definitely not me. Let's be clear about that.
I'm just saying, like, there's somebody who's getting paid. Be like, oh,
no,
the famous Cool G-Raps lyric, up, and away. Take that with you on the way down. You know,
super facts.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I love it. No, that's perfect. But it's like it's that kind of thing, right? So when people try to ignore it or turn a blind eye, I think you're doing yourself a disservice because you have to look at cleaning that part up is hard because you can't change a person's mentality that thinks that, you know what, being destructive to your own property is of value, right? Because what would happen if we weren't destructive? Like if I snap my finger like Thanos and tomorrow there was no more of that happening, right? Would the projects still be the projects, right? Would it still be looked at as low value if people had the neighborhood clean, no trash on the ground, no murders, no killings, everybody can come and go as they need, people just did what they do? What would change with that, right?
Well, Here's the thing about that, Antoine. The projects have always been the projects. Now, back in the day, there were black families in the projects in the neighborhood, not as nice as the white neighborhoods, but they were still relatively, well, not even relatively. They were still much nicer than the projects these days. And we all know the reason why these things have occurred and how they happen, because the government couldn't come there with a paintbrush and fix the buildings, but they managed to find a way to get a whole bunch of drugs in those neighborhoods and have a drug trade, and that's how those things turn into what they are.
Darian, go.
I got nothing. I think I think what my co-panelists have brought forth, I'm pretty much on the same page with them in that aspect. So I'm good.
That's fair. But speaking of
all I'm saying is there ain't one black dude I know in the projects with a passport, but there's all kinds of Colombian things afoot in there. That's all I'm saying.
www.blackadvancement.com.
There's no factory.
What? www.blackadvancement.com. You can also check out a bunch of different stuff on the site. Hey, you can check out our debate section where you get to see dirtbags like these guys go back and forth on great on different topics such as gentrification or integration. You should check out our whole list underneath that section, this being one of them. Also, you could check out our recommended websites where we promote Black-owned businesses. If you know a good Black-owned business that you think that we should look into, you can holler at us and we can try to promote them. This is what we do. That's what we're here for. Anyway, another thing that we're here for, speaking of which, hold on a second. I almost forgot. The one that we want to highlight from our website today is Herbs Day. Shout out to Broccoli, to Brother Brock from Hollywood show. We see you, brother. We see you, brother. He just came out with something the other day. Anyway, so last but not least, for this last plug from the website is our book of the month, and it's aptly done for this particular topic, and it's called The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, a forgotten history of how our government segregated America. It's a must read. If you haven't read it yet or you haven't heard of it, copy this down, please do. And it goes to a lot of what somebody's been saying here about the government this and the government that. I digress. Anyway, we'll go on to our last and final question on the topic of gentrification. Question number 3. What can be done to prevent the expansion of gentrification? Tough question. And when we have tough questions, we go to the newest panelist that we have, which is Darian Rollins. Darian, take it away. You can always pass if you want.
well, no. Question. Give me the question one more time.
What can be done to prevent the expansion of gentrification?
I mean, at this rate, I'm not sure.
That's a fair answer.
Well, I mean, there's some other things that are at work here that we definitely highlighted the racism and government aspect. One thing that I also think kind of plays into this is climate change itself. And this is more on a scientific aspect. So as you see now, with the climate aspect, seas rising, you're going to see and certain things like let's say like water, being clean water, fresh water, or potable water not being drying up in certain places. A good example is what's going on at the Colorado River. You know what I'm saying, and the communities that is supporting. Is that one of the things about, and this is, I think, is definitely about American history, is that we've utilized technology and also government supports to expand our humans' footprint into various places, right? And use up the resources in there. Now we're coming to a point in time where the plan is we've overused those resources. They're drying up, and so certain members or segments of the population that went out from these cities to live and to conduct their lives are now being forced to possibly come back to more of a metropolitan population, because they just simply can't sustain the lifestyle out there, whether it be from water, whether it's also you're seeing like all these brush fires or these huge fires like that those people in those communities are in places where it's tough for humans to actually survive in. So you're going to have to come more to these city places where the destruction on that aspect is not as as expansive and also possibly recurring as you see right now. And so I just think you're going to see more of an influx of people coming in from those outer areas into those areas. And so hence more gentrification, because again, where are you going to put all these people that are now coming back to these cities for job opportunities, for living in places where they can get these resources. I'm not sure if you're going to see an end in that aspect. So
funny you should mention that. I just heard a story like earlier this week about how there's a town that's in near Scottsdale, Arizona, where they were getting their water from them and they just cut them off recently. And those guys are almost done with water. As far as just being out there, they've been living off of trailers brought in from places for years now, but it's getting pretty scary out there. I digress from that point. Antoine.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that I have an answer to the question. I think Darian answered it perfectly. I think that from the perspective of what I think needs to be done is obviously we're stronger together. And so people being able to stick together in those spaces to support their businesses, to build them up, to try to make sure that there's a consistent growth theme towards the future. And that goes in terms of our resources, our finances, and our ability to develop whatever we want that future of said town or city to be, right? So don't let it stay what it was for the last 50, 60 years. Take it forward into the future. And there's only a handful of ways to do that, and it takes money on one hand. On the other side, you have opportunity, and there's space and opportunity for both sides to come together and kind of build that so that we don't have a consistent theme of gentrification. The population on Earth is going to continue growing. I think you do see the exploration of people trying to find another planet that is inhabitable for human life. But I'm not going to be the first one to go there. But, they can take a group of people and make it easier. But until then, the more they were able to kind of scale up what we already have, it'll lead to it being better for all. A lot of times you listen. There was the guy who owns Walmart, or as part of the family of it. He did an interview talking about what would happen if they paid people $20+ an hour. And basically, I'm like, well, if eggs are $9 a pop right now, what more would you want to raise the prices to, right? Yeah. Because everybody talks about turning a profit, but they're not telling you that it's not quite that, right? There's a flip side to it, because you're making that now. You've been making it for years. That's not what's stopping you from being able to pay people their worth. And until people that are in those scenarios realize their own value, right? I think I look at it like this. If you're going into a situation and there's one person who's willing to cross that line, right? That one person has cost millions. I'm going to give you an example. When the pandemic kicked off and you saw people quitting Panera and Barnes & Noble and all these places, companies panicked. They caved in. Mm-hmm. They had nobody, right? Because people are like, look, I make more being at home broke than wasting my time to pay to get here, because you can't assume everybody has a car. You can't assume that everybody lives the same quality of life as you, right? So when they were unified in their effort, the same way from a corporate perspective, people were like, look, we're going to work from home. I mean, we've had laptops, tablets, and everything where you've been able to do these things for years, but you were convinced that you must come in where I can watch you and track keystrokes and all these weird things that people do, right? Takes the humanity out of it. And for one moment in time, for about 2 years, they had to be humane. Mm-hmm. And it humbled these organizations because there was that unity. The power has always been in the people. And if people remember that together and don't allow anybody to proverbially cross that line, you'll stop a lot of the gentrification that's there, at least, some of it. It's not going to stop all of it. And I'm only going to speak for the continental US at this point. But if we took a stand the way that people take a stand in some of these other countries, they'd realize that you're serious. And there's more than one way to take a stand. I'm not talking about rioting or tearing anything up. I'm talking about just intelligently taking a stand together. Hey, here's the demand. Here's what we're going to do. And guess what? Magically, things get done. I think nurses were on strike here in New York City. And guess what? Lives need to be saved every day. Hospitals need to be run. So you don't get change. And I think people have this thought that you get change by asking for it, right? You don't get change by asking. You don't get change even by demanding. You can go in your boss's office right now and yell, I need a raise tomorrow, or that's it. No, you have to show them better than you can tell them. You got to meet them at the intersection of messing around and finding out. It's a family show, so I'm not going to say what I want to say. But, you get the point.
No,
Yes.
I get that. I get that. All power to all people. Greg, what about you on this question?
Yeah, the only real solution is basically what everyone else has been saying. The haves have to start looking out more for the have-nots. And if the haves don't start looking out more for the have-nots, and the have-nots need to take steps to stop helping the haves get it, have. That's the only way to stop these kinds of things. I know that sounds weird the way I said it, no.
I actually like the way it came out. Yeah, they have to stop the haves from getting halves. Being halves, yeah.
Yeah, you have to stop the haves from having. You know, there's ways to do it. But that's really the only way. And until we temper down the level of greed that we see in this country, things like this will never happen. But the country has been built on 3 or 4 strong principles: greed and racism, and that is just basically what gentrification is. It all sprouts from that. That's what this country is made from: greed and racism. So we're gonna have to cut out either the greed or the racism. I prefer both, but one's gotta go.
Yeah.
Now, if you're gonna give me more money, you can call me whatever you want.
That's not the way forward. That's not the way forward. No, let's go to the website. Guy on the couch. What you got for us, man?
Question number 3, what can be done to prevent the expansion of gentrification? Michelle says, I think the key is to make sure equal opportunity housing laws are both strong enough and aggressively enforced. Public community banks, such as what Andrew Yang proposed during his run for New York City mayor, could help provide poor and working class people access to loans and credit so they can build credit history and improve their access to quality mortgage terms and better housing. I think steps such as these would help all neighborhoods, regardless of demographics, build collective wealth and attract investment and economic growth. Back to you.
Shout out to Michelle on that one. What do you guys got to say to that in response to Michelle's at least her proposal or her ideas towards stopping the expansion of gentrification? Going once, going twice. It's cool because actually,
go ahead, Ash.
No, you got it because I'm gonna end it on something. Go ahead.
No, I was just asking. I'm not completely sure because Yang was running. He ran for president, correct?
Yes, he did.
Yes.
Or excuse me, he jogged for it. He didn't exactly run.
No, he did decent considering.
Well, wasn't part of his plan some kind of program where you were gonna get couple $1,000s a month or something like that?
I think
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
The universal based income.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what they did with the Child Care Act, so to speak. It was something similar, which McConnell was scared shitless sorry, it's a family show, but he was scared that would pass because he knew that if people kept getting that benefit, they wouldn't let it go. And then he was like, oh man, then we're gonna have to do something for the people instead of corporations. And what am I supposed to do? Anyway.
I mean, but to your point, right? The benefit, when you talk about gentrification, it's all about who's benefiting, right? How do you think Mitch McConnell's worth $38 million, right? He ain't did shit. He doesn't throw touchdowns. He ain't got the #1 album. He's not Beyonce in Dubai. He ain't shit. He's just a dude that keeps ripping off the people who vote for him down in Kentucky. You know what I'm saying? But somehow 38 million. And they won't tell you. It's the benefit. That's what it is. Because it's good to be the A side in the gentrification thing. When you go there and you plunder these cities and you do all these, different locations, this stuff is mapped out. You just happen to come in and here's some financing. Oh, by the way, here's some lighting. Need a plumber to fix this is great. Because you know what happens to the poor people who are in these places, right? Mainly brown people, right? And I'm saying brown to cover everybody. I don't want to just say black folks, but guess what happens?
Like advancement.
You want a haircut here? Guess what? $20,000 for this haircut. But when they change things over and it's John Paul Gaultier, the haircuts go back to $30, $40 then. But until then, we're going to overprice things, overcharge things to try to get you out. We can't live here. We can't stay here, right? Hey, are things getting too expensive for you? We'll buy your home. Oh, by the way, you want some money to go? Hey, I don't know where you're going to go, but take this money and get out by the 30th. Can you do that? Like, it's different things that pop up. So like, yeah, that's that. It's tough, you know,
That's tough.
and nobody cares. They don't care where you go. They don't care if you got education or education, how you survive. They don't care anything about that. You know what they care about? You're out. And next thing you know, here comes a bulldozer. Next thing you know, it's a casino over there. They done ran some water on it. You know, they do all of these different things that just immediately are going to stimulate in some kind of way. And you, as the person who used to live there, be like, man, I'm so down bad right now. You know what? This money they gave me, I think I'm finna go and spend it in that new casino.
Yeah.
That was my house. You know, they got some condos also in the high rise there that now these other folks live in. So it's like people are not unaware of the benefit. You know, what is the benefit of you have a mega mansion with 20 bathrooms and all this stuff, and you're like, hey, where's such and such to come clean this shit? Why you don't clean it yourself? Why are those people go on strike? Now all of a sudden everything's an inconvenience. You have to inconvenience the people who are doing the taking in order for you to get the gain, you know, and change does not come pretty. I mean, you think that right now we'd all be Will Smith in Emancipation if it wasn't a bunch of people down in, you know, these other places that decided to start fighting, right? Because at the end of the day, people weren't going to be like, man, you know what? I feel bad about this. No, they were benefiting. There were huge benefits and gains. Right now in the United Kingdom, right? There's things that are on display that came from Africa, right? But they're treating it like, you know, hey, you know, this is generations. And no, it's not. You didn't grow this. This didn't come from your rainy streets. This came from the soil. It came from the land. You took that. You weren't the only country. You know how did that happen? Africa, I think, has 52 or 53 countries in it, okay? You know how many continents had to come together to conspire to take that whole thing in terms of the natural resources and to be able to pillage and take that over and leave it in disarray, all right? None of these places are, absolved of the conflict, right? They all took a part in it. And guess what? When somebody starts talking about it, people turn that deaf ear, right? When somebody starts talking about it, even if you're Prince Harry trying to sell a book, guess what? Because you got here, you got to LA, you realize you're a jag, you're just another guy now. Nobody's falling out over you like, oh, it's the print. No, they don't care anymore. You were here for like a little bit and it's like, all right, look, get out my way. I got to take my kids to school, you know? And so life is real at that point. Your perceived value is what you become if you allow them to assign that to you. You have to create and change that narrative. So when you see these folks that are like down, they're down because nobody's ever supported them. Because if you give these neighborhoods 1 ounce of support, right? And to this point that we made earlier about the tearing up of our own thing, it's not just physically, sometimes it's metaphorically as well, right? So if you have somebody that comes in and creates a program for growth, that program could be anything. It could be a STEM program, it could be an outreach, it can be mentorship, it could be anything. You have to be open to receiving those gifts and that opportunity to better yourself or let those that are coming after you, right, to come to better, you know, themselves so that they have a new opportunity at a very new outlook, right? Because now you have roots that you're growing there, right? And you know how it is. Everybody on this call is incredibly intelligent. A tree don't grow overnight, you know. By the time a tree is sprouted all the way up, those roots are deep into the ground. And it takes something like, I don't know, a man-made chainsaw the size of a 30-foot building to come through and take it down. Right? You can't tackle it. You can't knock it down. You can't get a mountain lion to knock it down because it's firm in the soil. And that's what we have to do. We have to have this watering of what we have to get to where we want to go. You know where we've been. We know the history. We know the obstacles that have been there. What is the solution? Everybody seems to be afraid of the solution because the cost is high. It is. Are you willing to pay the price for progress? And I think that's the real question that people aren't answering when it comes to gentrification. People come with these quadratic equations and start saying
that's an incredibly American is an incredibly American answer that we give, and the answer to that is no. We're not willing to pay for that. We're not willing to pay for it unless the right people get hurt. And the right people
we're not quite desperate enough yet.
Yeah.
When it gets to that level. But they always temper it down right before it gets there. Yeah. They temper it down right before it's at that boiling point. Then they turn the temperature down.
When the pandemic happened, then we were all in it together. When the Civil War happened, we were all in it together. But it has to be the right people getting hurt. It's not how many you shoot, who you shoot, right?
Like imagine like if it was like a Contagion Last of Us scenario where something literally started taking over, right? And all of these things that are supposed to mean something all of a sudden your humanity becomes the incredible value. Not an Apple Pay, Google Pay, none of that stuff, right? But just who you are and what you can really do at that moment, right? Now you have true equality there, right?
Well, yeah. What you find is that many of these dudes are Edward Norton from Glass Onion. So that's what you'll find.
I haven't seen Glass Onion yet, so
I didn't spoil nothing. You'll figure
okay.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
You'll like it.
Darian, do you have one thing to say, and then I'll get to the last plug.
I guess on, following Antoine. I mean, you brought out a lot of good points. I mean, you got some mix of Frederick Douglass in there, some Eric Killmonger, and brought it home with some MLK. You know what I'm saying? But also in terms of solution that you maybe think about in terms of something that's, I guess, not really simple. It's something that can be done. Is like, if you are in these areas and you happen to own property, whether it's something inherited or is, hold on to it. Do what you can to hold on to it. Don't sell mama's house. Don't sell grandma's house. You know what I'm saying? Hold on to it. See if you can pass it along to the next generation. Make sure your presence being there is what's going to be the start of whatever solution that's going to turn this in their favor for the folks who live there. Don't be this, fight what you can do to not be displaced, you know what I'm saying? And give up what you have already, you know what I mean? And so that means maybe passing on that check from that developer, you know what I'm saying? Knowing that okay, it's not going to be me that's going to and wealth is not always, in that aspect, is probably not the objective as far as maybe success is concerned, but saying that I'm gonna hold on this for my future generations or future family members who come after me, you know what I'm saying? So they always have a place, a foothold in here, in this place, and that can't be taken away as long as I'm willing to fight for it. So that's maybe one solution to this issue. So I think that's all I had on that end.
In closing, before I get to the go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
No, I was just about to. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Sure, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say the assumption is that they're not just going to take it.
Trust me,
because that's how this operates.
That's always overriding. That's always overriding concern. Like I said, I point to Tulsa as my guidepost. You know what I'm saying? It's a matter of, yes, that is always fully a possibility, but it's not one of the things where you can roll over and just give up. You know what I'm saying?
No, you shouldn't roll over and give up. I'm just saying
and say,
almost a surefire guarantee.
Yeah, and
if they want it, they're gonna take it. And that's the part we have to figure out how not to happen.
Absolutely.
That's why we need people in powerful positions and everything else. We need to be there ourselves, or we need to find realistic allies.
Right.
To look out. So,
right.
Like I said, this is all from the top down situation.
I would be remiss if I didn't talk about gentrification and then not mention one of the greatest shows of all time, which is the Boondocks. Everybody knows that I love to use stuff from movies as an analogy. Anytime I think about gentrification, I think about this fictitious restaurant called the Itis that was launched in a place where Eddie Wunsler Jr., I believe, because his son was the third, wanted to buy a property. So the place was very high and no one wanted to sell to him. So he agrees to go into business with what's his name? Freeman. I forgot what his first name was. This
Jebediah Freeman.
Yeah, it's Jebediah Freeman. And he makes these foods that make people fall out. And it pretty much made it akin to what would happen if somebody was given a bag of Coke and then started serving it to the community. People were falling out. They were leaving trash everywhere. They're getting thrown out the restaurant, so on and so forth. They brought down the property value down to rock bottom. And because it was causing all these problems, they said, this is a community risk. We got to close this place down. And as soon as they closed down the Itis, what do you know? Wunsler bought all the property that he wanted in the beginning for a much lower price. gentrification.
Yep.
If you want to know more about this, you should go to www.blackadvancement.com, where we do a bunch of different things, including some of our shows, which include Black Advancements, The Female Voice, dope show. Holly Hood, shout out. Obnoxious Synopsis, that's a news show. Beautiful Struggle, that's a research show. And you can also do other things, like you can check out something that we do that I don't know if a lot of nonprofits do, but we do it. And that is our donations page, where you actually see where the money's going that we get and when we get it in. And we do our best to keep great track of it. And we do keep track of it. So that's always cool. Another thing that was really cool on the website is Black People You Should Know. One that we would like to highlight is Whitney Moore Young. He was born in 1921. He died in 71. He organized the Community Action Assembly to fight poverty in the Black communities and was awarded the Medal of Freedom. If you want to know about him and other Black people you should know, you should go on there and check out the link. And finally, what the Black Advancement was created for, and that is solutions. Basically, solutions, what we mean by solutions, we come up with solution sessions or Blackboard sessions where we come up with ideas to combat the problems within the Black community. And then after that, we try to implement them and actually combat these problems full on with a good plan and a good strategy going forward. But I digress from that point. That's our time for today, folks. We'd like to thank you for watching. Follow us on Facebook at The Black Advancement, on Twitter at Black Advancement, BLK Advancement, on IG at The Black Advancement, or our website, which is www.blackadvancement.com. I believe that's the one. Yeah. But until the next time, everybody, peace and advance.